All right, welcome back to the email and mobile track. Today we're going to dive into a case study with the company behind that video, Movement Watches, and how they've grown revenue 98% with email. So joining me now is Blake Pinsker, the Marketing and Brand Director at Movement. Thanks for joining us, Blake. So give us a sense of what's your background, Blake, and what do you do at Movement Watches?
Sure. How you doing, everyone? So excited to see everyone here. I don't know what to do with my hands right now. I'm a little bit nervous. My name is Blake Pinsker. I'm the Marketing and Brand Director for Movement. I started with the company about 2.5 years ago. My good friend from grade school started the company and reached out to me to pioneer the marketing department. And I was the first full-time marketing hire along with my co-director of marketing, Spencer. Everybody say hi, Spencer. So we started working out of our living room and had our hands on almost every part of the business, from email, social media, creative, e-commerce, product design, you name it. We've seen it all. We've now built out a team of 20 really talented people. We work out of our office in Playa Vista, California, and very happy to be here today.
Well, and last year you were out there with them, right?
Yeah.
So we were joking around. You saw the live optimization session with Flip McLaughlin. Last year, Blake was under those hot lights and getting his landing page optimized. So what was that like, Blake?
I actually think I was sitting right there, and it was pretty crazy. We came last year and didn't expect to be called up during the optimization lab, and that 5 minutes, I think, was probably the best learnings we got the whole conference. And we walked away from there, one, a little embarrassed because we got called out in front of everybody at the conference. But two, we were pretty fired up because we felt like we really took something home that we could put into action. And I remember sitting there and saying to myself, like, what do you have to do to get up on stage? And to be sitting here now is still shocking. I don't know what we did to deserve to be here, but apparently we're doing something right.
Well, that's what we're going to talk about. So we saw the video about Movement Watches. We really like it's a very customer-first business in general. But tell us about the beginning of your marketing strategy with Movement Watches.
Sure. So we knew early on we weren't going to break through a pretty crowded market doing things the traditional way. So we saw that our target market was spending the majority of their time on their mobile phones, mostly on social media. So while most people were still saying you couldn't build a business through social media about 2.5, 3 years ago, we saw it as an opportunity to build a unique brand experience. And before we knew it, we were driving a majority of our traffic from our social channels. And it was great, but we also knew we needed to diversify where we were getting traffic from.
Yeah, when we were talking on the phone getting ready for this, Blake gave, I think, the perfect value proposition for why to incorporate email marketing into your marketing mix. And this is from someone who built their entire business on social to begin with. So Blake, why don't you tell us about that?
Sure. So again, Facebook and Instagram, these channels were crushing it for us. And we were only sending about 1 to 2 emails every few months as far as campaigns. And so we knew in order to continue our growth and sustain that over a long period of time, we couldn't romanticize with only getting traffic from social media. And that's where email came into play.
Because you own that email list, right? Facebook,
Correct.
Instagram, they could change the algorithm, they can do different things, and they could burn you. But you own that email list, right?
Correct. We were collecting all this customer data, and we felt it was time to start leveraging it.
Yeah. So for them, they were on social media. They're trying to build that email list. For you, if you're trying to build your email list and you already have one, still, how can we use social to make that list a little bigger, a little more engaged? So what was one of the first things you did?
So this was in 2015. Don't mind the design. It was a last-minute Photoshop job. I know it's not very pretty. But essentially, we were looking for ways to build our email list, and we had the idea to push a giveaway campaign on Instagram. So with one post promoting the giveaway, we essentially asked people to enter their email to enter the contest. We didn't have very high expectations, but we ended up collecting around 6,000 emails from the campaign, and we saw 3% conversion rate from that list. Now, you're asking, how do we get 6,000 people to convert from a giveaway? It's not very fair if you do a giveaway and only a few people win. So we have an everybody wins mentality whenever we do something like this. And even if you don't win the free watch, we usually give everyone who participated a discount code at the end. So everyone kind of feels like they've been rewarded for participating.
And another way you built your email list is email is more about just sending promotions. I mean, you also wanted to send some really hot news items. What were you going to send to them?
So this example right here is from a recent product reveal. Anytime we have a new product coming out, we try to use the hype to really build awareness, one, and two, also promote some of our email capture opportunities. So when we had this new product release, we essentially promoted a VIP list for first access to the new product. Usually when we come out with new stuff, it's limited inventory, so there's a sense of urgency there. And this campaign specifically, we collected nearly 5,000 emails, and we saw a 55% open rate, which is about 30% higher than our average email. So you could see the success of leveraging campaigns like this.
Yeah, it's great. And so for you, it might not be a product, it might not be a limited edition product, but it's great to ask, hey, what information can we use to get out to our audience to make email a service, right? What insider type of information would they like to know about our company? All right, so this was a relatively new channel for you, like we talked about. So you were just on social. I mean, how did you scale up? How did you get the team in place? How did you make this happen behind the scenes?
Sure, so it wasn't that fast of a process. It took some time putting the right pieces into place, a lot of trial and error. And I think the key to trying to scale a new channel, number one, you just have to start. I think oftentimes you spend way too much debating when you could be spending that time being a practitioner and actually learning the craft, testing different campaigns. And so that's what we did with email. We just started trying. It didn't always work at first. Some of our early designs and campaigns were pretty bad, but you learn from it and you get better. Number two, obviously early on, we didn't have any investment, so we didn't have big marketing budget, and every dollar we spent, we needed to see a return. So we obviously made sure that every campaign we put out and every dollar we spent had to be tracked. And lastly, for us, we started with a pretty small team. Again, we were working out of our living room, and we had to find the right third-party partners to help build some of our channels. That way we could really focus on our strengths, and we hired third-party experts to handle a lot of the technical side of things and come in and teach us how to be experts on all these new channels.
Yeah, so I mean, for many of us, for many campaigns, we have to get those right partners in place, but it's a really difficult decision to make huge investments. So what did you do? How did you find the right partners?
So a lot of our best partners have come from referral. Oftentimes we're referred by a brand we look up to or a brand we're close with. Also, looking at the track record of an agency, we've been burned by a fair share of agencies who sell you the dream and they end up delivering a nightmare. So you got to avoid those, and the way you do that is you oftentimes you see what clients they're working with. If it's a proven track record, then that's obviously someone you're more likely to trust and find success with. Two, are they energetic and passionate about your business, your product or service? I think it's important that they have a good understanding of the brand, and they can also get behind it like someone you would hire in-house. Three, I think it's important that they have proven knowledge of the industry. I think you want to find someone who has more experience than you and someone who can teach you something you don't already know. If you're hiring someone that you have greater experience than, you're probably not going to learn much from them.
Yes, I really like your second bullet point. I think a lot of times when we're looking for agencies or partners, we're trying to say, like, who's the best? When you think about it, when you're going into a marriage, you're not saying, who's the best person of the opposite gender? You're saying, who do I fit with best? So just seeing you backstage, you're a passionate guy. I'd almost hold him back from running on stage. He's going to come out here. So how do you find out if you have that right fit? What are some of the things you do?
So there's just this feeling when you get on a call with somebody or you meet them face to face. They're either going through the motions and they're just trying to convert the sale and bring on a new client, or they're really fired up and they understand your brand story. And usually you can feel that pretty almost right away when you first start talking to someone.
Feel that connection. All right, so let's talk about this customer first reason for connecting with your customers over email. So you have a very specific worldview on using email. What is that?
Sure, so I'm going to do a little experiment here. By show of hands, how many of you love getting your inbox bombarded by brands. Okay. Interesting. Okay. Question number 2. How many of you are hungover? Okay. That was a trick question. Question number 3. You're in Vegas. I should see more hands than that. Come on. Okay, question number 3. How many of you love being sold to 100% of the time you have someone hit you up in your inbox? If your hand is raised, meet me after the presentation. I want your email. No, I'm just kidding. No, so here's what I'm trying to get at here. I think far too often we forget to think like consumers, and instead we think like marketers and salespeople. So while we're all sitting here thinking this way as consumers, I'm just curious why we go and do the opposite as marketers and salespeople.
That's an excellent point. Well, so let's take a look at some of the different emails you sent. This is one of your product-focused emails. What were you doing here?
Yeah, so to my last point also, so what we try to do and the way we combat that is we balance our product-focused emails with content campaigns. Essentially, every email we send has to provide some sort of value. Here we have an example of a campaign we did for a new product release. It's pretty straightforward. You see the product, you see it on someone's wrist, it takes you directly to a landing page, and this is what we'd consider a product-focused email.
Now let's take a look at one of your content-focused emails. What are you doing differently?
So we started these content-focused campaigns built around the lifestyle we built for our brand, and essentially this campaign was featuring a video that highlighted very little product. The objective of this was to get people to the site, engage with the brand. We weren't really looking to drive a ton of revenue. As you can see, the landing page, it didn't even have products on it. You had to go through another call to action to get there. What we found that was absolutely shocking is a lot of these content campaigns were driving almost as much revenue as our product-focused campaigns.
That's pretty amazing, because especially that extra step you have to take to get the product. So what I really notice here is, you're almost telling a story. You've got the email that tells a story, and then you go to a custom landing page that helps continue that story. So how did you learn to do that? Where'd you get that idea? So, yeah, and just some data on this one. This was actually our highest performing campaign to our women's customer segment all of December, which is one of our biggest months of the year. And it wasn't even product focused. Essentially, a few years ago, we realized that there was a drop-off when we were sending people to our landing pages because the email was talking about one thing, but we were sending them to a generic collections page that had nothing to do with the email. So we started building these landing pages that were essentially an extension of the email. To continue to tell that story, and then eventually you get to that product after really they understand the story, right?
Correct, and that's, the idea of this email is to get people to click through to the website, consume the video, read more, and ultimately keep our brand top of mind with people.
Because they're not buying watches every day, right?
Correct. One of the natures of our industry is you might only buy a watch once every year or so. So we want to keep you top of mind when you aren't necessarily in the market for a watch by providing value in something other than just watches.
Yeah, and another reason I think this story is really important, and this is where it may work for your company, it may not, but Blake really understands what his watch's value proposition is in relation to other watches in the marketplace. So where does this story fit in with that? I know you said you were competing with Rolex and some of those type of watches.
No, that is not, actually, that is not a competitor.
I know you were not saying that, but...
that's one thing. We don't try to be something we're not. We try to stay pretty authentic. Our price point is $100 to $150, so we don't pin ourselves as a luxury watch. But if you are into fashion and you don't want to get ripped off by a big retail markup, then we're the brand for you because essentially our watches are the same quality as something you'd see in a store for $400 or $500, and we're able to sell them a fraction of the price direct to consumer online.
Okay. So now I noticed a lot of imagery in what you're doing, and I think it was interesting how you found that right imagery. So one way we can find effective imagery is by A/B testing and seeing what works best there. But first you have to know what to test. And so where did you land on the right imagery for your brand?
Sure. Early on, again, we had to find ways to be scrappy. We didn't have big marketing budgets, and we didn't have a lot to spend on photo shoots. So what we started doing was, one, using customer photos, Two, we were just sending our watches to a vast list of photographers on Instagram and essentially having them shoot our product in exchange for free photography. This example here, the picture on the left, is a stage studio shoot, something you might see in like a catalog or a magazine. The picture on the right is Spencer on a balcony doing it in his spare time. And the results of these two campaigns, so the first one is for sunglasses, the second was for a watch. In a Facebook ad, the Spencer's wrist shot saw 88% decrease in cost per order and 461% increase in engagement.
I imagine it's cheaper just having him go out on his balcony and shoot. Yeah,
I'm no expert, but some people tell me that the ROI on something that's free is usually positive.
Okay, let's look more about those dedicated landing pages for your email campaign. So this was the original campaign linked to your collections page, as we talked about. So with this page, where you're actually telling the story, let's look at some of those results. Those are pretty impressive.
Yeah, so this, again, the objective of this page was to build more of a blog page where people could consume content. It wasn't necessarily to drive product. And it ended up being one of our highest performing emails in all of January. We sent people to the landing page to consume more about these bloggers' trip to Canada. And this versus a product-focused email that sent people to a collections page drove 44% higher conversion rate and 70% higher revenue.
Yeah, it's a good example of knowing when to make that ask, right? We saw this with Simple Finance yesterday, about they had to figure out what's the right sequence of emails before people are ready to sign up for an account. And in this case, it might be they're not ready to buy just from the email. They got to see some more content before they're ready to buy. So now, mobile seems like you kind of have a young skewing audience, a millennial skewing audience. I'd imagine mobile's important to you. What were you doing with mobile emails?
Sure. So we saw a huge shift about 2 years ago where a majority of our traffic was coming from desktop, and then all of a sudden it just started flipping to majority mobile. The example on the left here is a campaign we did that was not optimized for mobile. You'll see a lot of text. There's not any product shown above the fold. There's no call to action above the fold. And essentially when you go through this whole email, there's really no reason to go to a landing page because you consume all this content on the email itself. The email on the right instead has big text. The call to action is right above the fold. You have the product right in front of you, so you see what you're being drove to the website for. And we'll show the results. So the one on the right saw a 100% increase in click-through rate.
Even though you're very mobile-focused, people are still reading this on desktop as well, right? So you're taking a mobile-first approach?
Mobile-first, I think it's only going to continue to become more of a majority. Right now, as you can see, the email on the right is on a mobile phone. But if you want to show the data, we'll kind of dive into what our split is right now. We're seeing 62% of our web traffic come from a mobile phone, and 74% of email opens from a mobile phone. And this continues to grow. What's interesting is 53% of our revenue is still coming from desktop. So desktop is still incredibly important. But we notice a lot of our users are going cross-device. So they'll open an email on their phone, and then they'll go convert on their desktop.
Yeah, so I mean, the lesson here is really follow the money, right? So if you saw 74% of email opens on mobile, maybe you try to go all in, but understanding that customer behavior, sounds like they're triaging on mobile, and then they're going to those beautiful landing pages on the desktop before they're deciding to purchase.
Correct.
So now let's talk about the product. What I really liked about this, again, this story is it's not just customer first email marketing, not just customer first mobile marketing. Really, your whole business is customer first. And by listening to your customers, through social media, it actually helped you build one of the products, right?
Yeah. So we consider ourselves a brand built by the people. We were crowdfunded. Social media is huge for us, and we've built this community of people who are very engaged with the brand. And we were trying to come up with a new idea for a new product line. And one thing we were noticing was people were using their watch as an essential travel piece. And we were noticing pictures on social media where people would go in front of the Eiffel Tower or a huge landmark and use their watch to show that they were actually there, and they didn't just pull the image from Google. So what we did with our next watch line, called the Voyager series, was make the theme around it a travel-inspired watch. It was our most rugged watch to date. It featured a dual-time subdial, so you could essentially tell time in 2 different time zones. It featured a waterproof case for the first time, and also mesh and NATO bands, which give it a more rugged look.
You know, that's a great example of why digital is so powerful, right? It's not a one-way conversation. We're not just sending things to customers. I mean, you could really listen to customers too and watch their behaviors.
Yeah, absolutely. So we consider social media and the feedback we get on there a focus group in itself. Don't get me wrong, market research is still incredibly important, but we're getting live feedback on everything we do. And that's why I encourage people to not hesitate to share as much as possible on social media, because the feedback you start to get can be incredibly valuable, and you can put it into play in real time rather than waiting months and months on market research or a focus group.
Yeah, you're setting yourself up for success knowing your customers are going to want that product.
Correct.
That's really nice. Okay, so raise your hands if you have any questions for Blake, and we'll have a microphone going around to you. But Blake, why don't you say, what are some of your top takeaways from this for other marketers out there?
Sure. So obviously, use email to build brand affinity, improve retention, and keep your customers engaged with the brand. I think if you could walk away here with one thing to remember from my presentation, start approaching marketing in the head of a consumer as opposed to just trying to be a salesperson 100% of the time. And again, exchange value for trust. In order to build lifelong customers, people have to, 1, trust you, and 2, believe in who you are as a brand. And we use email as a platform to do that.
So any questions out there? Okay. Well, thank you, Blake. And Blake will be up here, after the session if you want to go up and talk to him one-on-one. Blake Pinsker, everybody.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone.